Howdy, 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 everybody. How's it going? This is Cinemaholic Productions. My name is Spencer, and I'm a cinemaholic.
Oh, I'm Ryan, and I'm a cinemaholic.
We have a big show ahead of us today. We're going to be talking about our watch lists to start off, followed by reviews of Hacksaw Ridge and Doctor Strange, the new Marvel Studios film. So let's start off by talking about our watch list. So, Ryan, what have you been watching this week?
Okay, so jumping right into it, I had a very busy week, and so I was only able to watch one and a half movies. I started one this morning, but then had to stop it for this episode. So the one that I am going to talk about is a favorite. This is the end. I love this movie, and I thought it was somewhat appropriate to watch with Halloween so near again. Um, I think you are actually the one who told me to watch this movie. I remember we watched the interview at your house, and then I hadn't seen this, so you suggested that was the first time that I saw it. This time it holds up. It's more funny this time because I was able to ingest some of the old jokes that I got the first time, so that I could be ready for some of these jokes. The premise is while attending a party at James Franco's house, Seth Rogen, Jay, and many other I just clicked it, sorry. And many other celebrities are faced with the apocalypse. I love it so much because it is so, I mean, it's so out there, but it's also so relevant. I really love that they used themselves as the characters, and I think that's what makes it so funny is you can really connect because you're like, oh, that is that guy. And one of my favorite parts that hit me this time as compared to last time was at the very beginning, they're sitting in the car and he's like, do you want to go to Carl's Jr.? He's like, man, I don't do that stuff anymore. I don't eat gluten. And then they had like this 3-minute conversation on what gluten is, and I died laughing. It was hilarious. What are some of your thoughts on This Is the End?
I love This Is the End. I really like Seth Rogen's brand of humor. Him and Evan Goldberg are really good comedy writers, in my opinion. And This Is the End is so funny. It's one of my favorite comedies in recent memory. It has some of like the best cameos in any comedy ever. There's like a great cameo, sorry, at the end with Channing Tatum. That's amazing. There's Paul Rudd. There's Michael Cera. And all of them are so outrageous. And Danny McBride in This Is the End, he steals the show in that movie. He's so funny. There's a really, really funny argument between him and James Franco regarding a magazine. That's as far as I'll take it because it's really, really crude, but it's so funny. I love This Is the End. Yeah.
I think overall, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. I really love this movie. I think my favorite cameo is Emma Watson, specifically when she's in the room and they're outside talking about her, and she comes out, she just starts dropping the F-bomb. I was like, oh, this is gold. This is awesome. So that's the only thing on my watch list. I'm stumbling for this week. I did start watching First Girl I Loved, which I'm really excited about. So I'll talk about that next week. What have you been watching?
So I'll start my list with my rewatch as well because a couple weeks ago, Thomas Middleditch, who was the lead actor of Silicon Valley, the HBO series, which is what I'll be talking about conveniently enough, he posted a picture of them starting production on the 4th season of Silicon Valley. So I decided I was going to go back and rewatch the entire series. And it was basically the best idea I've ever had in my entire life because this comedy, and seriously, you might think I'm overselling it, but this is one of the best comedies ever made. I love Silicon Valley so much. I'll read the plot summary on IMDb real quick. It says, in the high-tech gold rush of modern Silicon Valley, the people most qualified to succeed are the least capable of handling success. A comedy partially inspired by Mike Judge's own experience as a Silicon Valley engineer in the late 1980s. This is the man who gave the world Office Space, which is one of my favorite comedies ever. And this movie is basically Office Space for the tech community, and it is so funny. The cast is great, just one of my favorite TV shows ever. The writing is so good. Honestly, guys, this is so good. Ryan, have you ever watched Silicon Valley?
I haven't, but I love TJ Miller, and you've been talking it up so much that I need to start at least watching it.
Well, speaking of talking it up, it's a 10 out of 10. And all the way through, I'm not kidding you. There's not a weak episode in this show, in my opinion. I love it all the way through. I think that it just keeps getting better and better throughout the seasons. Each season has a really great structure. It always starts off like everything looks like it's going to be going okay, and then everything just goes way downhill super fast, and the characters just have to come up with solutions to solve it. And it's always so funny, so smart, so amazing. You should definitely check this one out. The next movie on my watch list is actually a documentary called Tickled. Have you heard of this movie, Ryan?
I've seen it.
Oh, you've seen it?
Yeah, I saw it in theaters.
Okay. Well, then I'm really excited to talk about this movie because this movie is insane. I had heard of this a while ago, so I kind of had it on my radar. I was like, it sounds interesting. It sounded really weird, to be completely honest. And it just got even weirder. Like, it was so much weirder than I ever could have expected it to be. It's basically about this Australian journalist who finds this basically videos on the internet. Yeah, underground. It's called competitive endurance tickling or something like that. And so he decides to dig a little bit into this, and it is like Alice in Wonderland down the rabbit hole. My goodness, this movie is so insane. Really haven't seen anything like this, but man, did I enjoy it. I give this one a 9 out of 10. So 2 super high scores on my watch list. Really, really interesting movie with Tickled.
I really enjoyed the movie too. I had no idea. I went and saw it with a friend, and we had no idea what we were getting into. And the ending, I walked out of there like creeped out. I mean, it's a documentary, so it's not really a spoiler alert, but the guy is still out there. Like, there's no solution to this thing. And so we started like looking up endurance tickling rings around us, and we're like, oh my gosh, this is real. This is weird. I would probably, I need to think about it a little bit more, but I'd probably give it an 8.5 to a 9. I'll stick with an 8.75. Really good movie.
Yeah, just really, really weird. There's some crazy stuff that happens out in our world, people, and this movie really shows the sick, kind of dark underbelly of some of that stuff. So let's get into our first big review of the week, which is Hacksaw Ridge. Hacksaw Ridge is directed by Mel Gibson and stars Andrew Garfield. And it tells the story of World War II American Army medic Desmond T. Doss, who served during the Battle of Okinawa and refuses to kill people, and became the first conscientious objector in American history to be awarded the Medal of Honor. Mel Gibson directed a Best Picture winner with Braveheart. He directed Apocalypto, which is a movie I really liked, and he directed The Passion of the Christ, which was another movie I thought was really, really well made and good. Braveheart's one of my favorite movies ever made. So let's start off, Ryan. What did you think of Hacksaw Ridge?
I loved it. I knew going into it, I had seen the trailer. I knew it was going to be good, but I didn't know it was going to be this good. He hasn't directed anything. Mel Gibson hasn't directed anything in a while since Apocalypto. That was like 10 years ago.
10 years ago. 10 years, yeah.
So it's been a while, and understandably so. It's not, I mean, it's a similar situation to Birth of a Nation, in a sense that there's some crap that went on in his life. He said some things, he did some things, but that aside, art from the artist, he knows how to direct a movie. they, in all of the advertisements and all of the posters and the trailers, they always said from the director of Braveheart. They never said directed by Mel Gibson. And I can understand that, but he deserves his name on everything in this. This is a Mel Gibson return to form film, and no one shoots action like him. You brought up Braveheart. It has some of those sequences, and it's spot on in that aspect. That being said, the beginning was a little weak for me. The whole flashback when they were kids, I understand that it was necessary. I probably would have approached it a different way. It didn't quite work for me with how everything started, and him being the whole I don't know, it felt Captain America-ish. He was the good guy and he wasn't going to do any wrong, and he was going around, he finds the girl, and it wasn't as strong as I wanted it to be. But as soon as he talks to his dad and he says that he's going to enlist and that he's already signed up, from then on, the tension is so intense. It's so on par that I was there for the ride, and it held me. It's a long movie too, so for it to be able to hold an attention span for that long was on par. What do you think?
I'm with you. I'll start with my complaints as well, and it's kind of just a little bit echoing yours. There are some scenes in this movie that can feel slightly heavy-handed. I don't think I dislike the beginning as much as you did. I think that the opening scene, it was kind of cheesy and corny. It kind of felt really traditional to me, which this whole movie actually felt really traditional to me, which is one of the reasons why I ended up liking it so much. I want to start by talking about Andrew Garfield, who I think here is Oscar worthy. I think he is seriously so good in the movie, and he is like the heart of the movie. And every scene from the beginning, even though there are scenes that are very, very corny in this movie, he's so good in this movie that you just like don't even care that it's like really, really cheesy. Like super, super cheesy in some parts, 1930s cheesy, kind of like the Captain America, like, let's go get him, gang, like you said. Like there's parts in this movie that are kind of like that. They're so cheesy. But I actually ended up really being sold on the cheesiness of the beginning. And the thing that's really neat about this movie is that opening half, you need it, because the second half, there's that giant contrast in that battle. And, this character's really put into this situation where, he everything this man stands for, everything this man believes in the world is completely put to the test in this situation that he happens to find himself in for a very gruelingly long time. And he's sometimes confronted with situations where he's faced with violence and he accepts that he's going to die. And that is something about this character that just, as soon as that happened, I like got so emotional in some scenes in this movie. I'm not going to lie. There were scenes that I straight up cried in this movie. No shame at all, because it is so well done in those battle scenes. This is some of the best shot war sequences ever put to film, I would argue. Another thing I want to mention in this movie is Hugo Weaving. Hugo Weaving needs to be nominated for Best Supporting Actor for this movie. Every scene he was in this movie, he stole. He was so great in it. I love this movie. I think Mel Gibson should get maybe some Oscar attention for this movie just because of how well those battle sequences are filmed. Like the scene where they introduce Hacksaw Ridge, like the build up to that sequence and then the payoff of that sequence, how when this war starts, when the fight breaks out in this movie, it is a horror scene. It is a flat out horror scene. That part, when it first breaks out, scared the living crap out of me just because of how quick it happens, and everything just goes insane after that. And that's the thing, is this movie really captures kind of the chaos of war in a way that I really haven't seen since probably like Saving Private Ryan, that I don't feel like has been captured in this way. And maybe it's because there's no more combat like this, but wow, this movie, wow, that's all I have to say.
I'll tell you, it did really well for me of not really choosing a side. I mean, obviously sitting there I was rooting for him and I wanted him to win. But when it gets into the war and it breaks out like that, he does a really good job at not choosing sides and saying, "Oh, root for America," or "root for the Japanese." You can kind of see both sides and why these people are fighting, and that really worked for me. And like you said, the contrast was so necessary. During the first part, I was like, "Nah, what is this?" And then as you get through, by the end of it, I had totally forgotten and forgiven any even slight issues I had with the beginning, because it worked so well in the long run. And this is a movie that it's gory and it's going to be rough to go back and watch, but I'm excited to go back and watch it. And I'm definitely going to see this at least one more time, if not twice, in the theater, because it's a movie going experience. And this is something that needs to be seen in the grand scale that it was envisioned in. I like what you said. I want to talk to you about Oscar buzz really quick. I agree. I don't know. I haven't seen too much of the nominations for lead actor. I know he'll probably get nominated. I don't know if he'll win yet, but I want to kind of play the field a little bit and see
Yeah.
who's up there. But I think this could win. I think it'll probably get a Best Picture nom, and I'm not sure if they'll give Gibson a director. He may deserve it because it was so beautifully executed. They'll probably not give him one, but I think it could get a hair and makeup, a costume, and sound design. The sound editing and the sound design were brilliant, and I think it's going to walk away with those. What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't know. I think honestly, I would be happy if Mel Gibson got a Best Director nod, just because these battle sequences, I don't think I can sell these enough for people. They're like straight up, like, there's scenes in this that are just a horror movie. Like, there's one nightmare sequence in this movie that scared me more than any horror movie has in a really long time. And you kind of said hair and makeup. Andrew Garfield's hair just looked perfect the entire war. It was amazing. So that's another kind of gripe I had about the movie. Really, would his hair look this good when he's running through explosions and carrying bodies? Like, oh. But man, I really, really like this movie. I'll start with my score. I'm going to give this a 9.1 out of 10. This is one of the best movies of the year so far, without question. I hope Andrew Garfield gets nominated for an Oscar. I have to wait and see the other movies too before I decide who should win. But Andrew Garfield right now for me is the front runner of just the movies that I've seen. I think he is my favorite performance of the year thus far.
Well, I just broke mine. Sorry. I was throwing up my score and then it disappeared.
That's okay.
So there we go. 8.9. That's my score. I really enjoyed this. It was funny because you tweeted out your reaction emoji right when I was in the last like 15 minutes of the movie. And I was like, oh man, we just saw it at the same time. This is so good. And then you text me right after that maybe this year isn't as bad as we thought.
Yeah. I didn't see a single negative movie this week. Like, somehow I managed to slip past all of the negative movies. Maybe that's a spoiler for the next movie, but
I agree. So 8.9. Let's get into the next movie. The next movie is going to be Doctor Strange. The premise of Doctor Strange is you follow Stephen Strange, who is a renowned neurosurgeon who he's cocky, you know, he starts off, it's kind of highlighting his life, shows him doing some surgeries and stuff. And then you follow his story as he gets in a car crash and loses the ability to functionally use his hands. He starts to gain it back, but it's obvious that he's never going to be a surgeon again at all, let alone one of the top ones. And so he goes on a quest. He starts doing all these different things to find out how to heal his hands. He turns to some monks, finds the ancient one, and there we go. Spencer, what did you think of Doctor Strange?
well, real quick, Ryan, did you hear about Will Smith's son,
No.
Jaden Smith? So listen to Jaden Smith's tweet. We're just going to set that up. We're going to have Jaden Smith. This review is featuring Jaden Smith as of right now. So his tweet after he saw this movie, are you familiar with the Twitter account of Jaden Smith?
I'm not. I
If
mean, I know who he is, but I haven't followed him or anything.
you should follow him. Okay, because listen, this is one thing he said. Just watch Doctor Strange. I'm completely blown away, and I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life to those practices. Thank you. So let that sink in for a minute. Jaden Smith, Will Smith's son, legitimately believes that Doctor Strange, his powers can actually become a conceivable type of science. So knowing that is out in the world, I'll say I enjoyed this as a movie because I know that it's fake. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I'll start with a couple of complaints I have about this movie. So kind of like Hacksaw Ridge, I'll start with my flaws about it. And that's that the first act of this movie is really weak to me. And it's because of Benedict Cumberbatch's performance in the first act. So let me get into that because I know tons of people are Benedict Cumberbatch fans. I myself am a Benedict Cumberbatch fan. But look, guys, he did not sell the arrogance well, the American arrogance well, in the first act of the movie, which is crazy because he plays Sherlock Holmes in Sherlock, and he does totally fine in that. So I think that it's crazy that he did not sell the arrogance well in the first act of this movie. And especially with seeing something like Iron Man, where Tony Stark sells the arrogance super well, it really made this week for me. But then as soon as he met up with the Ancient One, this movie like became super, super good to me. The action sequences in this movie are really, really cool. Like they are really visually exciting. There's a lot going on. They're really mind-bendy. Like the way they're kind of kaleidoscopy, the way that everything's moving at all times, and the way the characters kind of move throughout the kind of like dimension-y type of realities or whatever is super neat. And I thought that that was exciting. And to kind of piggyback off that comment, the visual effects in this movie are just mind-blowing, I thought. The side characters were great. Benedict Wong played a character named Wong, funny enough, and he was really a great character. I thought like just a great Marvel side character, really, really cool. And the last thing I want to say about this is the resolution that Doctor Strange has to the big bad guy at the end of the movie was so smart and awesome, and unlike anything we've seen in a Marvel movie. I wound up really liking this movie. What'd you think of it, Ryan?
So to talk about your thing at the beginning, I think he pulled off the American accent really well, and I wonder if he was focusing too much on that. But I can also imagine, you brought up Tony Stark. I can imagine conversations on set after takes of the director pulling him aside and just being like, that was a little bit too much, Tony Stark, pull it back a little bit. And so he came up with kind of like this half arrogant kind of thing, and it didn't work, like you said, until he gets out there and he starts, humbling himself and then coming back up, and he kind of can own that half arrogance of, this is who I am and I don't care, but it works, kind of a thing.
Yeah, and quickly, I just wanted to say, like, just because I didn't buy him in the first act this week, Benedict Cumberbatch is the Doctor Strange. I think he's really, really good in this movie. And once he kind of like moves over to the Ancient One, I feel like he starts to want to expand his intellect more, and that's when I started to like the character more. But it's just in the beginning, like I said, I think when it exists in the same universe as Iron Man, I have to look at this character compared to that character because, right, in the scheme of Marvel movies, that's kind of just like how I compare them to each other.
Right. And there's not really any getting away from that. And I don't know how you do it any better. So, I mean, that's just kind of an unfortunate flaw. Like you said, visual effects, I can't praise those enough. I mean, imagining what they went through on set, acting this stuff out, because the whole worlds are all CGI, and I don't know, it was crazy. I've never dropped acid before, but this is one that I was like, oh my gosh, this movie would be a whole nother world just watching it like that. So Um, I really liked it. My mind is kind of blank at the moment because it was kind of a paint by the numbers Marvel movie, but it wasn't at the same time. So I really liked that. I mean, I could kind of assume where things were going. It was a generic, coming of age origin story, and I could figure out some beats, but the new flavor and the tone was so different that it worked for me. The ending, I agree what you said with the big bad guy. I feel like that was refreshing and that was a change. But Mads Mikkelsen, why cast him? They didn't let him do anything really. Like, he walks in and he's this big, ominous, menacing guy, but you never really see that. The first time you really get to see him do anything, he's fighting Doctor Strange, and he can't kill Doctor Strange halfway through the movie, so it's a fair fight. And then fast forward, spoiler alert, to the end, you get to a point where he just disappears. Like, I mean, that's my gripe with the Marvel universe, though, is they've never really had a successful villain besides Loki. And what is Loki now? Is he a villain? I mean, he's kind of like, they kept him around, but they've killed off all their villains. But I understand how and why they're doing that, because this movie isn't about Mads Mikkelsen. It's about Doctor Strange. So I'm kind of split among that. I expected it, so I guess I wasn't disappointed. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I agree with you in the sense that I think that the ending when with Mads Mikkelsen, the last fight was underwhelming. However, I really bought him as a character up till that point. I am a fan of Mads Mikkelsen. That might have affected my overall view on his performance in the movie.
Well, I
But
am too. I loved his performance, but I feel like the character didn't need that caliber of an actor because they didn't utilize
see,
him.
I thought that it set up some really cool things. We can kind of get into spoilers. Do you want to get into spoilers?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, people have had an opportunity to see this. So if you have not seen Doctor Strange, tune out right now because we're about to get into spoilers. 3, 2, 1. Okay. The ancient one, once you find out that she's been kind of using the dark dimension, that's why Mads Mikkelsen character, I saw him as being in the story, was because he had to set up that kind of conflict between Doctor Strange and the ancient one.
Right.
But as well, he's kind of like the example of the person who uses that power for evil, the power of eternal life and all that, and using the dark dimension kind of to manipulate the universe in negative ways rather than trying to protect. So that's how I kind of saw it.
Yeah, I agree. I wish right off the beginning, I guess the opening scene is him going out and like kicking ass. I wish I could have had another scene of that where I could see him like really using and harnessing this dark power, and I could have understood the consequences of that. That felt weak to me. I could have just missed something. But I want to bring up another highlight I had for this movie is the runtime. It's under 2 hours. I can't remember what it is, like 147 or something like that. I loved it. I felt like maybe they could have added in a little bit more explanation, because even now talking about it, I feel like I have to go see it a few more times to understand the lore and kind of the whole world that they're creating. They could have maybe given some more explanation on stuff like that, but it was such a breath of relief to have something under 2 hours instead of like the extended cut of Batman v Superman, which is over 3 hours. This knew what it needed to be, and that's what they did. So I appreciated that.
I totally agree with you, and I'll echo what you said about this is really not like any other Marvel movie that we've ever seen, just because visually, first off, it's not like any more. There are scenes in this, like you said, that are just straight up like, I mean, I've personally never taken LSD either, but this is what I imagine it's like. Like, there's one scene that's just imagery with like hands that's like super, super weird and just crazy looking. I'm like, wait a second, this is a Marvel movie I'm sitting in right now. And that was just super, super crazy and interesting. So,
Cool. So I would give it an 8 out of 10 personally. I really did enjoy it, and maybe it is the runtime that really did it for me. Was they knew what they wanted to accomplish, and they accomplished it. And I feel like there was a lot less Marvel meddling in the movie, which is something they've done really well, especially lately, as they hire their directors, and their directors, they go out and they add their taste and their flavor. So overall, definitely a must see. Like you said, everything that came out this week. I'm going to go see Trolls later today. I've heard it's actually pretty good. So everything that came out this week is at least worth going and checking out.
yeah, I'd give Doctor Strange a 7.8 out of 10. So just a little bit below you. I just think that first act was just a little bit too weak for me to get up to an 8. But still really entertaining and worth seeing on the big screen. If you have any sort of desire to see this movie, then go see it. It's Marvel still hasn't let you down as an audience. So yeah, as you said, really good releases this week. But real quickly, before we wrap up the show, I want to talk real quickly about my friend Pam. Pam in this picture is the one just to the left of me. And Pam has recently been re-diagnosed with cancer. And I say re-diagnosed because she has just recently had cancer before. So there is a link to her GoFundMe account in the description of this video. So if you have any desire at all, or if you have the means to donate even just a little bit to Pam, treatments for cancer are very expensive, guys. And Pam's super, super awesome. I play video games with her like all the time. She's a great, great person. She has a great taste in movies as well. So I care about my friend. Please help her if you can. Thank you for listening to that. Where can everybody find you, Ryan?
Awesome. Find me down right there. Twitter at Rye_Gordon, as well as Instagram and Snapchat. I recently got a Snapchat, and I think it's Rye_Gordon Snap, because someone stole Rye_Gordon. So
yeah,
send them a bunch of snaps and get mad at them.
That's one thing we need to talk about. I have 3 Snapchat accounts for you on my phone.
Really?
Yeah, 3
Maybe
Snapchat.
one of them's mine.
So every time I send a Snapchat to you, I have to select all 3 Ryan Gordons.
Oh,
it's super
man.
annoying. So I'm going to use that information, Ryan.
Okay.
You guys can find me at Spinny Hind on Twitter. Spencer Henderson on Instagram. Snapchat, I'm not giving you guys my Snapchat account. Ryan's much more generous than I am. So thank you all very much for watching. You can like and subscribe. And thank you. Tune in next week.